You were never our priority. That's what my mother said to me. And just like that, the floor beneath everything I believed about my family collapsed. But this isn't where the story starts. It started the day I came home, thinking I still had one. After 5 years in Barcelona, new job, new life, new me, I returned to Austin thinking it would feel like a warm embrace, like slipping back into your favorite sweatshirt. Familiar, safe, mine. The sun was still just as brutal in Texas, the air thick with nostalgia and humidity. I rolled down the window as I drove through the old neighborhood. Kids were riding bikes in the street just like I used to. Lawn sprinklers made tiny rainbows. Even the cracked sidewalk near Mrs. Adler's place hadn't changed. Then I turned onto Lincoln Avenue. I could see our house at the end of the street. White brick, navy shutters, the creaky porch swing. Dad hung himself. I could almost hear it squeak in the wind, except something was wrong. The shutters were gray now. The swing was gone. The big oak tree we planted when I was 10, cut down. The mailbox didn't say Carter anymore. I slowed the car, parked right in front. Maybe they renovated. Maybe they rented it out. I walked up to the door. My hands were sweating. I couldn't shake the unease, but I told myself not to overreact. I reached for the bell. But the door opened before I touched it. A middle-aged woman with curly brown hair and kind eyes peeked out, holding back a golden retriever with her knee. "Hi, can I help you?" My heart stuttered. Sorry. I used to live here. My family, the Carters, this was our house." Her eyes lit up. "Oh, how sweet. We just bought it last year. The Carters moved out, said they were downsizing. Lovely people." My mouth went dry. My lips parted, but no sound came out. They moved out? They sold the house? Without telling me? I felt the world tilt a little. I nodded numbly, muttered some excuse about memories, and backed away. The moment I reached the sidewalk, my knees buckled. I sat right there on the concrete, unable to move. The heat of the sun baked my skin, but I couldn't feel it. All I could feel was the tightness in my chest and the burning in my eyes. They didn't even tell me. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, just kept seeing flashes. My dad teaching me how to ride my bike on that very driveway, painting the living room yellow with Mom, my teenage self writing songs on the porch swing, and it was all gone, erased, like I had never been there. I drove straight to their condo, each mile tighter around my throat. I didn't even know what I would say. I just needed to understand why. When my mom opened the door, she barely blinked. "You're back," she said, like I'd just returned from the grocery store. "You sold the house?" I asked, voice shaking. My dad shifted behind her, avoiding my gaze. My mom didn't flinch. "We needed the money," she said. "Daniel's business was about to take off. You were off living your dream." I stared at her, searching her face for guilt. There was none. "You didn't think to ask me?" She tilted her head slightly, as if confused. Then she said it. "You were never our priority, Elena. Daniel's always needed us more." That was it. No apology, no remorse. I turned around and walked out, no tears, no yelling. But in that moment, something changed in me, something cold, sharp, and I made a silent promise. They would never see what I was about to do next. You know that feeling when you're finally heading home after a long time away, like you're about to wrap yourself in a warm, familiar blanket? That's what I wanted coming back to feel like. That's what I had pictured. After 5 years living abroad, I thought coming home would feel like stepping into a memory, something safe, something mine. Barcelona had changed me in ways I never expected. I had moved there for a contract job. 6 months turned into years. A small tech startup offered me a design lead role. I took it. Then they blew up. I was promoted. I traveled across Europe. I found peace, independence, confidence, the kind I never knew I was allowed to have. But still, something always pulled at me. Something about Austin, about home. The Sunday morning pancakes with my dad, the smell of Mom's cinnamon candles in winter, the way the late Texas sunsets would pour golden light through my bedroom window. It wasn't perfect, far from it. My mom and I always had tension. She was sharp, cold in ways that never quite felt like discipline, but more like disappointment. My younger brother Daniel was always her focus. Every science fair, every scraped knee, he was her son, and I was just orbiting. Still, it was home. It was mine. When I booked that flight back, I was excited, nervous but hopeful. I imagined Mom's voice cracking when she saw me, Dad pulling me into one of his long, wordless hugs. I thought maybe we'd cook dinner together. Maybe I'd even help Daniel with his business pitch if he wanted advice. It had been 5 years. People change, right? So when I sat in that Uber watching familiar street signs flash by, I actually smiled. I clutched my phone like a kid holding a secret. I had even brought gifts. Little things I'd collected from Barcelona, a handmade tea set for Mom, a leather journal for Dad, a rare board game Daniel once mentioned he loved. I wanted them to know I remembered. I wanted to feel remembered, too. The driver dropped me off outside a nearby cafe. I decided to walk the last few blocks. Something about reconnecting with the neighborhood on foot felt right. Trees lined the street, branches swaying gently. Kids were drawing chalk pictures on driveways. One of them looked up and waved at me, and then I saw it. My house. Or what I thought was still my house, except it was gray now, and empty of soul. The flower beds were replaced with trimmed hedges. The porch swing was gone. The welcome mat that used to say Carter Crew now read Live, Laugh, Love. I remember stopping in the middle of the sidewalk, my suitcase in one hand, phone in the other. My heart started racing. My throat dried up. Something was wrong. I tried to shake it off. Maybe they were flipping it. Maybe it was under renovation. But in the pit of my stomach, I already knew. Something had changed. The thing is, when you've spent your whole life trying to be chosen by people who claim they love you, you get really good at sensing when you've been quietly replaced. I wanted to believe I was overthinking. I told myself, don't jump to conclusions. Just call them. Maybe there's an explanation, but there wasn't. And deep down, I think I already knew the truth. That house, the one I once called home, wasn't mine anymore. And soon, neither were they. I don't remember much of the drive to my parents' condo, just a blur of traffic lights and mounting dread. My hands were white-knuckled on the steering wheel. My brain kept looping the same question. Why didn't they tell me? I knew where they lived, moved into a small, modern place downtown after Dad retired, but I always assumed it was temporary, that the house on Lincoln Avenue was still ours, a symbol of where we began, a place to return to. When I pulled into the condo parking lot, my heart was hammering so loudly I thought I might faint. I stared at the front door for what felt like an hour before I rang the bell. Mom answered. No hug, no gasp, just a flat, "You're back." She stepped aside like she was letting in a neighbor, not her daughter she hadn't seen in 5 years. Dad was on the couch, reading the paper. He gave me a half smile like I'd just come back from a weekend trip. I couldn't take it. "I stopped by the house," I said. "Our house. Someone else lives there." Dad didn't meet my eyes. Mom's expression didn't even twitch. "We sold it last year," she said, like she was talking about a used sofa. "We didn't think you'd care." I blinked. "You didn't think I'd care?" My voice cracked on the word care. "We needed the money," she continued, walking into the kitchen, completely unbothered. "Daniel's startup needed a boost and it wasn't doing well. We used the equity from the house." I stood there, stunned. "You sold our family home to bail Daniel out?" She shrugged. "He's building something. You're already established. You were doing fine overseas. He needed us." I could feel the heat rising in my face. My fingers tingled. "So you didn't even tell me? I find out by showing up at the door like a stranger?" She turned around and faced me squarely. That's when she said it. "You were never really our priority, Elena." Her eyes didn't flicker. Her voice didn't shake. "Daniel's always needed more help. You're the independent one." I stood there in stunned silence, the words ringing in my ears like a scream underwater. I looked at my dad, hoping for something, a reaction, a correction. But he just looked down at the floor. In that moment, I felt like a ghost in my own family, like I'd been slowly erased, line by line, until only the memory of me was left, faint and disposable. I thought of the postcards I'd sent from Rome, Paris, Lisbon, how I made sure to call on birthdays, anniversaries, how I never missed a holiday greeting, no matter how busy work got. I even sent money during Dad's knee surgery, no questions asked, and none of that mattered, because I wasn't the one who needed them, and suddenly I saw everything clearly. I was never meant to come back, at least not in their version of the story. I walked out without another word. No dramatic exit, no teary goodbye. Just numb, like the cold water you let wash over you when you're too tired to swim. Outside, the sun was blinding. People walked past me, laughing, carrying iced coffees and shopping bags. The world kept turning, and no one knew that my entire foundation had just been shattered. But something strange happened as I stood there. Tears dried on my cheeks. A part of me cracked open, and something stronger started to crawl through. Not rage, not revenge. Clarity. If they could erase me from the past, maybe I could rewrite the ending. And the first step? Taking everything they thought they'd taken from me and building something better. Without them. I didn't talk to them for weeks after that day. Not a call, not a message. But every night, I found myself staring at pictures of our old house. Well, my old house. On Google Maps. It felt like I was mourning a death. Not of a person, but of a version of myself I'd held onto for far too long. I was halfway across the world again, back in my apartment in Barcelona, surrounded by city lights and opportunity. But for the first time, none of it felt like home. Something had been taken from me, and I wasn't sure if it was the house or the illusion that my parents ever truly saw me. Then, one morning, jet-lagged and scrolling aimlessly through email, I saw a subject line that stopped my breath. 42 Lincoln Avenue, property listing. I stared at the screen. My fingers hovered over the mouse. It was for sale. Again. My heart pounded in my ears. I clicked it open and scanned through the photos. The new owners had tried to modernize it. White walls, minimalist kitchen, cold and clean, but beneath the paint and granite was still my home. The breakfast nook where I used to doodle in my math books, the hallway Dad lined with Polaroids, the bedroom where I wrote my first poem. It was all still there. And now it had a price tag. I didn't even think. I called a real estate agent in Austin that same day. "Hi," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm interested in the Lincoln Avenue listing, but I'd like to purchase through a holding company," discreetly. She didn't ask why, just asked for proof of funds. Luckily, 5 years in European tech had been very, very good to me. I had savings, I had stock options, I had enough, more than enough. Over the next week, I assembled everything. I created an LLC under a neutral name, wired the deposit, signed the paperwork, all through my lawyer. The entire time, I kept hearing my mother's voice. "You were never our priority." And with every document signed, every email sent, I felt myself reclaiming a piece of something I thought was lost. Not just the house, but dignity, identity. The parts of me they discarded. When the deal closed, I didn't cry. I didn't celebrate. I just sat on the floor of my apartment, phone in hand, staring at the digital confirmation. "Congratulations, Elena. You are now the owner of 42 Lincoln Avenue." The next morning, I sent out invitations. Custom designed, heavy cardstock, gold foil trim, the kind you get for weddings or galas. No details except an address, a date, and the words, "housewarming party." I mailed one to my parents and one to Daniel. I imagined them opening it. Maybe they thought I was just renting. Maybe they thought it was a coincidence. I didn't care. I flew back to Texas a week before the party. I walked into the house with a key that was finally mine again. The moment I stepped through the door, a wave of emotion hit me. It didn't feel like loss anymore. It felt like a beginning. I restored the swing on the porch, painted the shutters navy again, put the family Polaroids back in the hallway, just the ones with me and Dad. And when I looked around, it didn't feel like I was reclaiming the past. It felt like I was redefining it. Because this time, I wasn't the girl who got left out. I was the woman holding the keys, and they had no idea what was waiting for them at that front door. The morning of the party felt still, too still. I woke up early, even before the sun had fully risen. The house was bathed in that soft golden light I remembered from my childhood, the kind that made everything feel warmer than it actually was. I stood in the hallway, barefoot, holding a mug of coffee, staring at the photos I'd rehung. There was one of me and Dad, covered in paint from when we tried to repaint the garage. Another of me alone, sitting on the porch steps with my guitar. I'd been 14. You could see the freckles on my nose and the big, hopeful grin on my face. I looked happy, untouched. By 2 p.m., the caterers had arrived. I had asked for a low-key setup. Classy, but simple. Mini tacos, sweet tea, bourbon cocktails. There were fairy lights strung through the trees, jazz playing on vinyl, and fresh hydrangeas on every table. It was everything I never got to have growing up. Guests started to arrive. Old neighbors. My college friend Rachel flew in from Chicago. Even Mr. Jenkins, our 90-year-old neighbor who once taught me how to ride a bike, shuffled up the front steps with his cane and a smile. Everyone kept complimenting the house. "This place looks incredible," someone said. "You've made it feel like a home again." That word hit me, home, because it finally was. Then, around 4 p.m., a familiar silver Lexus pulled into the driveway. I didn't move from the doorway, just watched, arms crossed. My mother stepped out first, heels clicking against the pavement, her face pulled tight in that polite, judgmental expression she'd perfected. Daniel followed, wearing a blazer far too expensive for someone whose last startup burned through $80,000 in 6 months. My father trailed behind, eyes low. They walked up slowly, unsure. "Looks like someone's done well for herself," Mom said, trying to sound light. She peered behind me at the people inside. "Is this where you're living now?" I didn't answer. I just let the moment breathe. Then I smiled, slow and calm. "Did I forget to mention?" I said. "I bought the house back." Their faces froze. Daniel blinked. My father opened his mouth, then closed it again. Mom narrowed her eyes. "You bought it?" I nodded. "Yes, legally, fully paid. It's mine now." I let the silence hang there, just long enough for it to sting. Then I stepped back slightly, but not to let them in. "To be clear," I said, my voice steady, "this party isn't for you." Their expressions cracked. "You invited us," Daniel muttered. "I invited you," I said, "so you'd know what it looks like when someone you erased builds a life without needing you." Mom scoffed. "This is petty." "No," I said. "This is peace, because I didn't come back to prove anything. I came back to reclaim everything you didn't think I deserved." I could see it in her eyes. She hadn't expected this. Not from me. The quiet one, the helper, the daughter who always stayed small to make room for her brother. "You're not invited," I said again, this time with a quiet finality. Then I turned, walked back inside, and closed the door behind me. Gently. The music played on. Laughter filled the air, and in that moment, surrounded by people who chose to show up for me, I finally felt seen. For the first time, this house didn't just hold memories, it held me on my terms. That night, after everyone left, I stood alone in the kitchen, barefoot, sipping wine from one of Mom's old crystal glasses. Funny how something so fragile could survive so much. The lights were dim, the music was off, and all I could hear was the soft ticking of the hallway clock, the same one that used to make me late for school, the one I almost forgot to wind this morning. I walked through the house slowly, trailing my fingers along the walls. They didn't feel like museum pieces anymore. They felt mine, not because I paid for them, but because I chose to reclaim them. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. What they did, selling the house, prioritizing Daniel, dismissing me like I was a footnote in their lives, it hurt. God, it hurt in ways I didn't even have words for at the time. It stripped away something I thought I needed, their approval. But losing it was what set me free. I spent so much of my life playing small, being the quiet one, the responsible one, the easy daughter who didn't ask for much. I thought if I kept giving, one day I'd finally earn their love. But love you have to earn isn't love. When I told them they weren't invited, it wasn't revenge. It wasn't cruelty. It was a boundary, one I should have drawn years ago. Because here's what I've learned. Blood doesn't guarantee belonging. Loyalty isn't owed. And sometimes, the family you're born into isn't the one you end up needing. I've built something better. A life where I don't have to prove my worth to anyone. A home that holds people who celebrate me, not tolerate me. A version of myself that no longer shrinks to fit inside someone else's story. After the party, I started something unexpected. I turned the house into more than just a home. It became a retreat space, a haven for women like me, quiet survivors of invisible battles, artists, travelers, entrepreneurs, people looking to come home to themselves. I called it the second key, because sometimes we all deserve another way in. People ask if my family ever reached out after that day. The answer is yes, but I didn't answer, not out of bitterness, but because silence is sometimes the loudest form of healing. Daniel's business eventually folded. My mom sent a stiff email months later. No apology, just updates, as if nothing had happened. My father never said a word, and that's okay, because the girl who once needed them isn't the woman I am now. I am not angry, I am not broken, I am home. And maybe that's the point, that sometimes the things you lose are the very things that lead you back to yourself. If you've ever felt like you were the background character in your own family, if you've ever been told you were too independent, too much, or just not enough, remember this: you don't have to earn love, and you're allowed to walk away from the people who taught you otherwise.